Hello, historians. Welcome to On This Day in History, because yesterday makes today and changes what happens tomorrow. So, a short look at what happened on the 16th of June. On this day in 1815, the battle at Ligny, the French army under Napoleon beats Prussia. Now, this was during Napoleon's second go around, if you will, in 1815. This would see the end of Napoleon and his reign and the end of Napoleonic Wars with the Battle of Waterloo. But at this stage, France defeating Prussia. Prussia was not necessarily the biggest country in Europe, not necessarily the biggest empire, but certainly one of the most powerful armies. His defeat of the Prussian army made the rest of Europe quite terrified. It meant that if he could beat them, maybe he could beat anyone. In 1858, on this day, again, how history repeats itself, Abraham Lincoln made the speech where he said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." And he said this in regards to the position of slavery and abolition in the United States, where he was of the opinion that the having 50% of the country roughly and 50% of the country roughly opposing each other is never going to work. He believed they had to become all of one or all of the other. There is no room for compromise. You either think that slavery is okay or you do not. You cannot allow either opinion. If you think it is okay, then you would not be able to make peace with the fact that other people in other states won't want slavery. If you think it is not okay, then of course you would definitely not accept slavery in any place in your nation. Just to be clear, in terms of that debate, I fall on the side that is against slavery. Just want to make that clear. Okay, in 1884, the first roller coaster ever used opens at Coney Island, New York. Again, something of an apt metaphor. It's been certainly a roller coaster ride through history since that point, between world wars, cold wars, ideological differences, war on terror, war on drugs. Well, we all know how the world has gone since 1884. Anyway, 1935, on this day, the Congress accepts FDR's, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, New Deal. This was his plan to get the United States out of the Great Depression, which of course did in fact work, but it also laid the groundwork for what is now known as the welfare state, or perhaps the social safety net. The idea that you may struggle in a society, you may fall, you may encounter difficulties, but society will have systems in place to make sure they do what they can to help you and put you back on your feet. Now, I say that in terms of that was the idea. Whether or not it actually definitely achieved that, or if that has been achieved anywhere in the world at this point, is obviously up for debate. And on this day, 5 years ago, TV personality and multiple times bankrupted businessman Donald Trump launches his campaign for the Republican nomination for US president at Trump Tower. The famous picture here coming down the escalator. Wow, what a day that was. And indeed, it is going to be the subject of our deep dive of the day. Now, this is one of those things where it happened 5 years ago, so it does, of course, technically qualify as history, but I can absolutely predict, now, not with certainty, of course, but I predict this is one of those events that will definitely be talked about in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 60 years, 100 years. This will be a topic of history for some time. So let's get in on the ground floor, shall we? So this is, I think, quite apt, if you will. This is the picture. We can see the bird's eye view of his little stage with his little crowd there as he came down the escalator to announce that he was going to be president. And he wanted to be president, I should say. The first words out of his mouth are indeed a lie. We can see the pictures here. We can see what's going on in the tower? And he says, whoa, that is some group of people. There's thousands here. No, there's not. But he knew that he was going to be on television, and on television there would be a close-up of just him, and no one would see just how small his crowd actually was. So there's a few dozen people lining the area leading down the escalator, and there were actually a couple of dozen downstairs where the event actually took place, said Alana Wise, who covered the campaign launch for Reuters news agency. Now then, this was quite a day, I can tell you. When I saw this taking place, a spectacle, the day it happened in 2015, I reacted very much how many people there reacted and how many people in the world reacted, which was to think this was the funniest thing I had ever seen. Now, in terms of how his candidacy was viewed, this was not seen as a particularly big event or a big deal that he was announcing his run for president or intended run for president, because no one believed that he was going to be successful or that anyone would take him seriously as a candidate. Alana Wise, again, she was an intern. Okay, this was one of her first assignments out of the office. So they said, oh, we need to send someone down there. Well, it's not a real story. He's obviously not serious about this. And who's going to vote for him anyway? They sent an intern. Now, this is one of those times where I would have done the exact same thing, and how wrong would I have been? So this is our image of his so-called thousands of people. We can see it's maybe a few hundred at best. Another journalist who was there, William Turton. I stood outside interviewing folks with signs. Basically, none of them spoke English. There was this one Italian family I remember who had these Trump signs, and I just asked them, why do you like Trump? They could barely string a sentence together in English. So they didn't even know what they were doing there. They didn't know why they were there. Another reporter said, it occurred to me, actually, at that moment, I wonder if any of these people are being paid to be here. So in that crowd, the people enthusiastically holding those signs, they don't seem to know why they're here. They can't seem to articulate it. They don't seem particularly enthusiastic. I wonder if they're being paid. Well, it just so happens that in the days following Trump's announcement, it emerged that he had paid $50 a head to attend that event. This is the moment captured in The Simpsons. Now, I should point out, The Simpsons predicted Donald Trump being president. You may have seen that online. It's a popular meme. This image of him going down the escalator, that aired in an episode of The Simpsons after it had happened, not before. Just want to point that out. That's why the people in the background are holding that sign saying paid, paid, paid. He paid people $50 a head to be there because he didn't have a following. He didn't have a lot of support. This is what the casting call said. We are looking to cast people for the event to wear t-shirts and carry signs and help cheer him in support of his announcement. The soundtrack for this event was Neil Young's Rockin' in the Free World. Since that time at later Trump campaign rallies where he tried to play music from the Rolling Stones, Queen, and indeed Neil Young, have all sent him cease and desist legal letters. We do not want to be associated with you or with anything you stand for. He was, at the time, known for his hair, made fun of all the time, of course. His TV show, he was the host of The Apprentice, after all, and his proclaimed wealth. Now note, I say proclaimed wealth because he has at various times announced he is a self-made man, which is a lie. He's announced that he has over $50 billion, which is a lie. And he has announced that he has never gone bankrupt, which is a lie. So what he says about his own finances is not to be taken seriously. I don't think anybody came away from that announcement thinking he was going to be the next president. But it was clear immediately afterwards that his talent for getting attention was going to serve him well. He knows how to get attention. He is a classic bad boys get more attention than good boys style of self-promoter. He deliberately causes controversy, knowing that it will be in the newspaper. And at the end of the day, people won't necessarily remember the stories. They won't remember the rumors. They won't remember the facts. They will simply remember who was involved and then remember the name Donald Trump. He had been playing this game for a very long time. So how did this sort of play out? Well, he likes to say that his run in 2016 was the first time he had run for office, but in actual fact, he had ran for the nomination of a third party, the Reform Party, in 1999 and failed. Now, that is actually an important point because, well, I will get to that in a moment. But this was the idea at the time. This was going to be just like his 1999 run. It was going to be funny. It was going to be a publicity stunt. He just wants to get his name in the newspaper, sell some real estate, sell some board games, sell some steaks. It's not going to be particularly serious. But it was because of this absurdity that other people underestimated him. Michael Steele, who was in charge of Jeb Bush's campaign, or senior advisor, I should say, of Jeb Bush's campaign, who was the chief rival to Donald Trump, watched this on TV. And he said, I remember the screen was really big, but not very clear. We all watched as he's coming down the escalator. It seemed like a joke at the time. So no one took him particularly seriously. And why would they? I didn't. That would be ludicrous that this guy would become president of the United States. So this is where it all comes together in terms of why I was wrong and how it fell apart, if you will. Now, this particular screenshot from The Simpsons, where the future episode where we see Lisa as the president of the United States. And she says, as you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump. Now, that is a direct quote from the episode Bart to the Future. So it was the 17th episode of the 11th season, and it originally aired in 2000, okay? So this was after his attempt to run for president in 1999, which failed, obviously, and this was seen as a joke. So the writer of the episode wrote this joke in because the idea was that this was a ludicrous future that would never, ever happen. So it seemed the logical last stop before hitting bottom. It was pitched because it was consistent with the vision of America going completely insane. So in the year 2000, the idea that there would be a President Trump was considered to be an insane proposition. It was put forward in The Simpsons as a punchline. This was meant to be a joke. President Trump, of course, as if that would ever happen. Come on. And this is the second picture. This is comedian Seth Meyers at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Now, this particular dinner is sometimes blamed for Donald Trump becoming president in the sense that it made him so mad he decided his ultimate revenge would be to become president. So comedian Seth Meyers made this comment. Trump has been saying he will run for president as a Republican, which is surprising since I assumed he was running as a joke. Now, this was 2011, where we see this same idea that Donald Trump running for president is a joke. Why would anyone take that seriously? And again, I remember watching that, and I remember laughing at that joke and thinking it was hilarious. Now then, how it became so important, why it was not so funny in the long run. Well, people weren't paying attention on both sides. I put myself in that particular box as well, because when I say people weren't paying attention, this is what I mean. Trump has repeatedly claimed he is the least racist person, but this is another meme, if you will, that supported Donald Trump in his run for president. And it says, he's been in the spotlight for decades and never once called a racist. Runs for president as a Republican and is constantly called racist. So the idea behind this meme is him being called a racist is just being political, and it's just because he's a Republican and Democrats don't like him, and it's just used an attack. It's not real. It's fake, 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 fake. Now, this is his actual history of incidents involving race, where as far back as 1973, he was sued by the Department of Justice for racist rental practices, where African-American or black potential tenants would turn up. They would say the property is not available. And then white tenants would turn up and they'd say, yeah, absolutely, you can rent it here. There was an undercover operation that proved this. They got the documents where they used to put the letter C on any applications from black people, meaning colored, meaning do not rent to these people. And he got in trouble for that. His company got in trouble for that in 1973. In the 1980s, dealers at his casinos say that the bosses would order all the black people off the floor. They would put us in the back. They didn't want them being seen by particularly prominent gamblers or be seen that they would have black people in their casino, because their casino was upmarket and black people aren't sophisticated enough to be in our casino. So that was in the 80s. He was still getting in trouble for that. In the early 90s, he says, black guys counting my money, I hate it. I only want short guys that wear yarmulkes, meaning Jewish people. I think the guy is lazy. So he's talking about his black accountant. I think the guy is lazy. It's probably not his fault. Laziness is a trait in blacks. It really is. I believe that. It's not anything they can control. Pretty racist in 1991 even to make that comment. So going back for that, over the course of those 20 years, he's gotten in trouble many times. Now, I could have made this entire list. I could have made this entire deep dive about this. But that's not necessarily the point I'm trying to make. You can see in 1992, he had to pay a fine for $200,000 because he was still doing the hide the black dealers in the back of the casino move. He attacked the Native Americans in a congressional testimony, saying they don't look like Indians to me, they're faking it. They're fake Native Americans so they can open casinos. That's literally what he was saying. In 2005, he publicly made this pitch. I want to have a season of The Apprentice, that is white people versus black people. And that would be his idea of a great TV show, to see if black people can in fact compete with white people. Wow, that would be great. Now, the reason I put all of that together is, and where it goes with this thing at the top, people weren't paying attention on both sides. The only way that that meme works, he's been in the spotlight for decades and never called a racist, is because people weren't paying attention. People don't read the newspaper. People don't pay attention to history. People don't care. They just want to watch TV. And what do they see on TV? They see a reality TV show that makes Donald Trump look like a really powerful businessman. That's all they know about him. Then this meme comes up in 2015, 2016. People go, yeah, that's right. I've never heard him called racist before this. It must be fake. But they weren't paying attention to Donald Trump's history. They weren't paying attention to the idea that, the generally accepted idea that Donald Trump would make a terrible president. But they weren't paying attention on their side. But on our side, we weren't paying attention either. We weren't realizing that not everyone thinks the way we do. We weren't realizing that not everyone is a history nerd that goes back and looks at all of this stuff all the time. You need to make sure that you're communicating this stuff. Don't assume knowledge. Now, this is where I want to make this particular point. If you voted for Donald Trump, if you believed Donald Trump would be a good president because he was a businessman, because he wasn't a politician, because he was an outsider, all of those things, I can almost understand that argument. What I don't understand is how, over the last 5 years, with everything we have seen, everything we have witnessed, everything we have come to know, and all of the knowledge that you have access to on the internet, you can still say that he is a great businessman, or he is definitely not racist, or I don't understand how that happens, because surely you should be paying attention by now. And of course, the entire birtherism saga, where he demanded Barack Obama produce his birth certificate because he was clearly born in Kenya. There's no way he could be an American, and therefore he can't be a proper president. That was also quite racist. So we go back to this comment. I assumed he was running as a joke. Now, that joke that was presented at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So that joke was made in front of news reporters. News reporters laughed at it. I was watching because I am a news nerd that lives for this sort of stuff. However, the actual ratings for the White House Correspondents' Dinner are quite low. Most people do not watch. Most people are not aware of what goes on there. Most people don't really care. Most people are just living their lives. So you cannot blame those people for not knowing things, but you also need to understand that assuming the knowledge of people is as dangerous as ignoring the knowledge itself, of course. Now, some of the other jokes that he made that night, Donald Trump said recently he has great relationship with the blacks, but unless the blacks are a family of white people, I bet he's mistaken. And in his announcement speech in 2015, after he came down that escalator, Donald Trump referred to Mexicans as criminals, saying they brought drugs and crime to America, and that is it. He also called in December 2015 for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. Now, I point these out to be, again, I don't understand how those comments can be made and people can ignore them, or how those comments can be made and people can produce a meme such as this that gets shared wildly and widely on social media, and people genuinely believe it. I do not understand. Now, maybe it's a good thing that I don't understand how people can not know things, because I'm supposed to know things. It's my job. But I want to point out that one of the things I definitely did not know when this happened in 2015 was just how popular statements like that would actually be in the United States of America. So from that standpoint, there was a lot that I wasn't paying attention to, and there was a lot that I didn't know. And my own arrogance and my own, shall we say, self-satisfaction with the fact that I know this stuff and other people, you know, all of those things, it was quite a humbling experience when he was elected. So with all of that said, as I say, that was very much most recent history, and sorry if it got all political, but it is definitely going to be one of those days that goes down in all of history. So I hope you have enjoyed this particular installment. I'll see you tomorrow.